Hi, everyone. My name is Eric, and I am a principal solution engineer with Tableau software. Principal solution engineer merely means I'm a Tableau product expert. The principal part of it just means I've been around for a while. So today I've got about 5 minutes worth of slides to introduce you to Tableau Prep. And then the rest of the time, which should be, if I do this right, about 30 minutes, will be in Tableau Prep Builder. My goal today is to give you all a good sense of how Tableau Prep works, what kinds of things you can do with it, how it might help you improve your time to insight. And we'll also touch briefly on how Tableau Prep can help your organization scale its analytics as part of the Tableau platform. So, start off with, why did we build Tableau Prep in the first place? Well, getting data into the right shape can be repetitive, it's manual, it's time consuming, it's really time consuming. In fact, the Harvard Business Review has done a study that shows that many analysts spend up to 80% of their time just preparing data and only about 20% of their time analyzing. Analysts, and by extension, business users who are often analysts without the title, right? They often try to get data in the right format from whatever sources they get it from. And they're doing that either for themselves or sometimes even for other people, but oftentimes they get stuck because either they don't have a tool that can do it at all, or because a lot of the existing tools in their organizations are either too complicated or too expensive. And oftentimes they just give up, or they have to rely on someone in IT or a DBA to do it for them. The other problem is that data prep is often done independently of the analysis, which creates a gap between the person doing the preparation or the tool doing the preparation and the actual analytic work. This gap can actually create time-consuming rework because of the back and forth between either the tools or the other people. Um, and oftentimes it slows down and takes you out of the flow of your analysis. Our goal with Tableau Prep is to help customers spend more time answering questions from their data and less time getting it ready for analysis. Now, Tableau Prep is intended to empower people to get to their analysis faster by helping them quickly and confidently combine, shape, and ultimately clean their data. It's a direct visual experience that gives users a deeper understanding of their data with smart features that make data prep simple and integration with the Tableau analytic workflow that allows people for faster time to insight. The user interface provides three coordinated views that provide a complete picture of the data and the workflow. You have the flexibility to pick which view to interact with based on the task at hand, and you see the results immediately. If you want to drop a column, you simply right-click and select Remove. If you want to edit a value, you can actually select it and directly edit it. With each action, you instantly see a result. This direct and immediate feedback helps you to see the results of your action, and it's flexible enough to let you experiment. Now, Tableau Prep also makes a lot of these complex tasks, joins, unions, pivots, aggregations, really simple. And it's always a drag and drop experience, just like the rest of Tableau. No scripting required. These intuitive experiences help you get the desired results faster and with greater confidence. Prep also uses smart algorithms to fix common data prep challenges. As an example, Tableau Prep employs fuzzy clustering to turn repetitive tasks like grouping by pronunciation or cleaning based on punctuation into one-click operations. Tableau Prep intelligently pushes a lot of operations down to the database whenever possible. That lets you leverage the existing database investments that your organization has made to get really fast execution. The goal is to keep you in the flow of your analytics. It's easy to open the flow output at any point in the flow to Tableau Desktop or share it via Tableau Server or Tableau Online. Easy sharing reduces friction and helps you bridge the gap between analytics and data prep for better business results, which is what we're really all after. Tableau Prep uses Tableau's data connectors, its calculation language, and all of our governance structure, so you can get up to speed really quick with it. So with all of that as a preamble, we should probably show you around, right? Let's have a look. Here we are in Tableau Prep Builder, as opposed to Tableau Prep Conductor, which we'll come to in a little while. And I'm really excited to actually show you around because this is a lot of fun. Now, for those of you who've used Tableau for a while, you probably notice that this looks very similar to Tableau Desktop. Over on the right, you have the Discover pane, which contains links out to videos, has links to blog posts, things like that. Over on the left, you have the Connections pane. And in the middle, you have work that you've done recently. Now, for the next little while here, I'm going to be sort of role-playing. Let's just say I'm an analyst at an office supply store called, well, what else? Superstore. And recently, we acquired another store called SupplyMax. Since the acquisition, I have data coming in from a whole bunch of different sources, and I'm not really sure how to combine any of them. And on top of that, I know it's going to be messy, and I've got a lot of cleanup work to do. So that might sound a little bit like tasks that some of you have gone through, either because you've been through a merger or just because you have data coming from all different sources. So as we go through this, I hope you're thinking about how this might fit into your work life. So with that, let's dive in. Now, as an analyst at Superstore, I know that the first thing I need to do is probably to get at SupplyMax's data. Now, as I click open the Connections pane, you can actually see a long list of things that we connect to natively, very similar to what it looks like in Tableau Desktop. We have all sorts of server-based data sources, cloud data sources, and of course, flat files. And being as we're early in the merger, I think what we're connecting to is a text file that they sent me. I do want to point out as an aside that we can connect to Tableau data extracts, both hosted on Tableau server in the form of published data sources and locally. But for the moment, let's go ahead and click in to our SupplyMax data. I believe it's this CSV right here. So let's take a look. Okay, so we've got that first data source connected. And you can see that Tableau Prep has already done a little bit of analysis for us. We're assuming that the first line contains headers. You get a quick preview of all of the columns over here. You can see a little bit of the sample value. A few other things to note is that if you've got multiple files, you can certainly union them right here. You can turn on and off data sampling, which is an important feature if you're working with really large data sets in order to improve your performance as you're working in Tableau Prep. And of course, one of the things you'll note throughout Tableau Prep is this notion of changes. Tableau Prep records all of the changes that you make, and you can come back and revisit those at any time. So with that, let's go ahead and just add a step and take a look at what our data looks like. So in this case, I'm just clicking on that plus symbol, adding what we call a clean step so that you can get a first good look at the overall data. Now, what you have here essentially are 3 panes. And by the way, let's go ahead and collapse this one just completely to get that out and get the most screen real estate we can. Now, a couple of things going on here. Up above, we have the flow pane. This shows us where our data is, where our data comes into the flow, any steps that we've taken to transform it, and allows us to pop back and forth as we need. Now, a couple of things that I noticed from an analytic perspective right off the bat show up here in the middle in what we call the profile pane. Now, as I look at segment, for instance, you'll see that consumer is where most of the sales are happening. Additionally, just like Tableau desktop, sorting is easy. And in this case, if I sort by state, I can see that New York is the highest, or it has the highest sales. Additionally, if I click on New York, what you'll see is we do some proportional brushing to show the overall locations of the data, so that you can actually get a sense for how much, kind of where we are in the units sold, or where we are in our segments. So some really nice quick insights just right there at the tip of your fingertip. Also, notice that if I select that, it actually filters the data pane, which is the bottom. And this is scrollable, and when you're using it in full data mode as opposed to sampling mode, you'll actually literally be able to scroll through all your data. So that's kind of the first insight. And if I deselect that and start looking around a little bit more, I'll notice that my shipping cost has mostly positive values, and you can see a lot of them kind of fall into this 0 to 10 bin, which makes some sense given the business, and a little more in the 10 to 20 and that sort of thing. But everything's a positive value except for this. Now, if we select it, what you'll start to see is the shipping costs get filtered down, and they all seem to be this 99 value. And additionally, if you start looking around where the proportional brushing is happening, we see this sort of odd product ID number. We see null for a state. We see kind of a weird thing in units sold, more nulls. And that tells me as an analyst that that's probably dirty data. So the first thing we can do with this is simply right-click and exclude it. Again, just like Tableau desktop, that kind of simple. Now, moving on into just to the left of this, we look at ship mode. Now, with ship mode, I see that there's first and first class. There seems to be second and second class, and standard class. Now, it doesn't take a rocket scientist to figure out that those things probably belong grouping, with some grouping. And like Tableau desktop, you can certainly multi-select and right-click and group them. But we've built something that makes that even easier. If I click on the ellipsis here, come down to group and replace, and simply select pronunciation. Watch what happens. So we do this fuzzy matching, and we discover that it's grouped everything into first class. It's left same day alone. But these are all selectable, and you can actually see, and in fact, you could add other categories into the grouping. If you're happy with the results, you can simply hit done and move on. Now, I mentioned changes earlier, so I wanted to touch on this really quickly. If I wanted to review the changes that we've just made, you can simply pop open the changes pane here, and you can select. You can edit whatever happened, so you can actually see, in this case, it's a calculation to filter out a particular set of values. But you can come back in and change these things and move them around as needed. So moving back to my analytic task, though, I think the next thing we need to do is to bring in the actual Superstore data. So how about we go to, let's come back over here for a moment. And in this case, my Superstore data actually lives in Microsoft SQL Server. Let's go ahead and log into that database using my Windows credentials. And we'll then be prompted to log into a particular database. Once we've selected the database, we'll be presented with a list of tables, and I know that it's this table. So if I bring that out, again, you'll see a similar sort of thing with the new input. In this case, it's a single table, and again, you can union and do things like that. And over to the right, we're profiling, and again, you can see the some sample data and the field names and such. Now, in this case, what I want to do is combine this data with my supply max data. To do that, we can drag up, and if you notice in here, we get a union and a join. In this case, what I'm going to do is union the data. And again, Tableau prep, that is, will start to do a lot of things automatically. So what we've done is looked at both tables, found the common column names, and matched them up. And in addition to that, we've shown you where the mismatched columns are. Now I can see that quantity, which is here, and units sold probably belongs inside quantity. So what I can simply do is add that together. So change number one right there. We've actually gone ahead and done that. Now that leaves us with region, which I know is a superstore field that we've used for a long time. And then we also have this company field. Now, that field, I'm not quite so sure what it does, but for the moment, I think what I want is for it to remain as an indicator of that it's the supply max data. And you'll notice again that if I select it, we filter. If I select region, it filters those. So if I combine the two, go ahead and do that. We've actually cleaned up the data pretty nicely right there. So that's actually pretty powerful right there. So we've actually already combined some data from a text file with some data from a database. We've matched up some columns. I'd also call your attention to this recommendations engine right here. So this is a bit of machine learning that's built in, and it will prompt you to do things that might make sense for the data based on some data profiling. So if we go ahead, and in this case, it's suggesting that we change a few things to geographic roles. We can go ahead and just step through that really quickly. Postal code, sure. And then finally, we're adding the state. That looks pretty good. Okay, so that's good so far, but I think the next thing we're going to need is our master product table. So to get that, I know that it lives out in Excel. Let's go ahead and grab that. Again, same sort of process. I would note here that first of all, you have a couple of options now that this flow has gotten larger than the flow pane. A couple of things. One, Tableau Prep Builder works great on large monitors. So if you've got access to one, this is a great place to sort of spread out. Two, all of these panes are nicely resizable. And three, as of a couple of versions ago, we added a zoom button. So you can zoom out, zoom in, whatever makes sense for your view. So you could actually, if you have, and I've seen some really big kind of crazy looking flows. If you want to get a sort of a holistic look at it, this is a great little tool. So what do we want to do with our master product table? Well, I think what we want to do is to join it with this current data source, or with the current sort of the union product of the other two tables. So in this case, if I drag and drop, we add a join. Now, a couple of things to note here. One is that we made a best practices, or a best guess look at the choice at the join and picked product ID from the union and product ID from the master product list. Now, if we had more to do with the join clause, we could certainly add additional clauses. We can also change the join type. The default in this case is an inner join. We could change it to a left join or a right join if we wanted. We could make a full outer join. And you'll notice that down here you see the results of each of those changes. Again, it's this notion of live direct feedback. So with that, as we skim through here, I'll note in the master product list, we're seeing some mismatched values. Now, in this case, these are probably products we just haven't sold yet, so I'm okay with this remaining an inner join. And I'm sure that it needs to be, but I'm also concerned that the output of our union is still missing 10 rows. Now, these are transactional records in databases. And I know that all of those transactions should be in there. I want to investigate that further. We make that pretty easy by giving you this little checkbox to show only the mismatched values. If I select that, you'll see that there's a product ID that has a couple of additional kind of dash marks there. Now, I remember I mentioned earlier that you can interact with things and make changes like directly on things. In this case, all I need to do is double click on the value, backspace over those dashes, and when I press enter, it actually applies that change across the entire data set. So now those 10 rows are included in the new table, and I think I'm good to go. Okay, so there's one final piece of this that I need to bring in, and that's our quota data. Now, that again lives out here in a text file, because like all good quota data should be in a text file, right? Let's go ahead and grab that. Now, a couple of things going on here. In this case, we didn't detect the first row. That's easy to change. So if we select that, I'm starting to see that we have a state column, we have a 2013 column, we have a 2014 column and such. We can see the sample values. Now I know that there's a quote per state per year. So how do I bring that in with everything? Let's start with this. Let's go ahead and add a clean step here for the moment, just so that we can actually see how this behaves. Oh, and the other thing that I wanted to call out is each time we add a step, Tableau color codes these things. Again, it's a subtle, what we call a pre-attentive attribute to just allow you to quickly and easily identify places in the flow where there are different data sources and different things happening. So in this case, I know that I want to join my quota on, let's say, state and year. Well, if I drag this up here and I try to join, I get state, but how do I get the year? I don't have a year column. I have 4 columns that are named after the years. That's kind of a problem, right? So what I need to do, this is the sort of the flexible back and forth method here. What I need to do, I think, is add a pivot. So let's go ahead and click here. And notice this says insert. We're going to insert a pivot. And this is where you can actually start to manipulate your data the way you might with a pivot table or something like that. So let's go ahead, multi-select these, and then watch what happens on the right in that pivot results area. I'll go ahead and drop that in there. And now what you see are 2 new columns. One of them is pivot names, which are clearly the years. So we'll call this year. And then pivot values are literally a list of the values from that table. If we double click here, we know that this is our quota. And there, we've actually made a change. Again, you can sort of review the changes right there, see what we've done with this. So that's pretty good. I've got my year. So if I come back up here and I click on my join, I've got year, and I don't actually have a year column here, but I can certainly add one. Let's go ahead and pop back over here to this cleaning step. Now, what's the year that I want? I think it's year of order date. And actually, while I'm looking at this, I also notice that this field is a date time field, but I know that it's really only a date field in this case. So let's go ahead and change that first. So now it's a date field. And let's go ahead and create a calculated field. Now, I know one of the calculations that we used in Tableau Desktop is simply called year. I'll call the field year. And then let's backspace over this. So autocomplete works very nicely, just like it does in Tableau Desktop. We want this to be year of order date. Calculation is valid. And we're good. Now, if I pop back up to the join, and I select this, go with a year, and then another year. Okay, so our join is built on year, state, perfect, except that I'm still seeing a flag here, right? Data type problem. Okay, so let's see. The output of the year field is an integer. What is this field? If I click back over to the pivot, this is a text field. Okay, so one more step to insert, just to illustrate how easy it is to insert these things. Let's go ahead and change this to a whole number or an integer. And you'll notice that the join is updated automatically and we're good. Final thing to do is that I know that not all of the quotas are there for all years in the data set. So I'm going to make this a left join so that I get all of my transaction data, even the ones that don't have quotas. And by the way, one other thing that I should point out, um, I'm not necessarily the best example of this sort of thing, but when you're building flows in the real world, I would highly recommend that you name your steps. In this case, I just double clicked and we'll call it merged data, merged and supply max. The idea being that when you come back to this a month later, you can pretty easily find your way through. You can obviously see the data sources, but best to rename these things to things that are useful either to you or somebody else who might pick up some of your work at some point in the future. So I think we have a pretty nice data set here, but we need to do something with it, right? And that thing that we do is going to be an output, right? In this case, you have a couple of choices. You can either save it to a file. At the moment, those files can be either a hyper file, an old school TDE if you're still working with an older version of Tableau, and of course, CSV files. The other thing you can do, and this is where we start to get into the scale of Tableau, and the idea to take your analytics and frankly your cleanup work and scale it. Let's publish this. Now, in this case, I think we'll probably need to sign into, oh, I think we're already signed in. That's good. Let's go ahead and make this the default project. And then we'll call this merger Data Superstore, something like that. Okay. Now, when I select Run Flow, Tableau Prep Builder is going to take all of the things that we've done and apply it and produce Tableau a Tableau hyperfile that's published to this, Eric's production site, project default, called this thing. Let's go ahead and do that. And sort of a typical behavior is that as soon as this is done running, it should pop us over to a data source. There's a slight problem with this, so I'll go ahead and click over to that. Let's go ahead and, interesting. It seems to have logged me out of one site. Let's try this. Let's sign out. Eric's production site. This is the site that I was supposed to be on. Sorry about that. Go into the default site. Right now we're showing all of the content type, but right now what you see is mostly data sources. And if I sort on modified, you'll see the merger data superstore. And so that data is now available as a published data source to any analyst who needs to get at it, which is great for scaling your work. But wouldn't it be nice if you could actually take that whole flow, which is back over here, and at the moment, what would have to happen is anytime this data changed, somebody would have to open up this file, hit run flow, and wait for it to happen. Now, I don't know about you, but if that's happening on a Saturday morning, I'm probably not going to do it. So that's why we've actually enabled anyone with Tableau Prep Conductor, which is part of the data management add-on for Tableau. So just to be clear, that's not a base Tableau server feature. This is an additional feature or an additional component that you can purchase beyond Tableau server, called data management. So check with your sales rep if that seems interesting. But in this case, what we're doing is simply going to the server menu. We'll hit Publish Flow. And again, merger flow. We'll call it something like that. So we're publishing again to the same site, to the default project. And if we hit Publish, it's pretty quick, right? Okay. So now here we are back in Tableau server, back on that same site, only this time we're actually looking at the flow. And so at a glance, someone can look at this and kind of pop around. You have the ability to modify the connections as necessary. So you could actually come in here and, for instance, embed a password. We'll skip that for the moment. But the most important thing is to actually leverage the power of Tableau server by having this run on a schedule. So in this case, if we wanted this to run every Sunday at 4 p.m., we'd simply come in here, select the schedule, hit create task. And that's kind of it. It's pretty simple. It's pretty straightforward. It's really powerful. So just to recap, in the last half hour, we've connected to data. We've combined it with other data. We've done some cleaning in this really visual, direct, and frankly intuitive way in Tableau Prep's interface, which again, our design ethos around interfaces is to kind of have it fade into the background so that you're actually kind of into your data up to your elbows. With just a few clicks, drags, and drops, we brought the data in. We did all of the cleaning, thousands of rows of data, and I was even able to gain a few insights about that data. So I know that that Supply Max sells a lot in New York, um, and I know that there was a little bit of dirty data, and all pretty quickly. So with that, thank you very much for your attention, and I hope you have a great rest of your day. Thank you.